So hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today. And I'm going to talk to you about Urban Forestry 2020, which is a research-based project examining higher education and the urban forestry profession, which we started about 5 years ago, and we've just finished on the last maybe few weeks, in fact. In fact, there's a few more items that will be coming out over time, but the bulk of our work is done. So what I'm going to do today is just share a little bit of that process and information with you and talk about some of the implications and hopeful down the road effects of this project on urban forestry as a profession. Okay, so I'm just going to explain a little bit about this project, and I hope that many of you have heard of this Urban Forestry 2020, and we have a website available now, and I'll give you the link to that, where a lot of our resources are set. But I'll give you a little bit of the history of how the project progressed, and then some of the highlights that I'd like to discuss a little bit, and I'm really looking forward to the questions at the end of this session, where we'll have a panel discussion with me and Cindy and Lisa about the future of urban forest management and urban forestry education, and also the professional image of urban foresters. And if I have on the slide here the question, what is the future of urban forest management? And it sounds like a very grandiose question, but I think it's really something that is important for us as people in the tree community to be discussing on a regular basis, really trying to envision what we would like urban forest management to look like 10, 20, or 30 years from now, and what kinds of steps we could be taking now to help get us to that ideal that we might have. Okay, so Urban Forestry 2020 was, as I said, a research-based project, and it really started out, this is the website right here, the URL, the www.uf2020. I don't know if you can see a pointer from me. Let's see if I click on that. There we go. Here's the URL right there. And so it started out as a question that was really focused on higher education and why we have a few programs focused on urban forestry around the country, but enrollment tends to be very low. So why are we having trouble getting students interested in urban forestry? And that was really the driving force behind this project, but it quickly emerged that there's a huge, I guess a huge trajectory, or I should say the trajectory from when someone is a child all the way through their professional career is a long and complex one, and just focusing on one aspect of that, which would be student recruitment, really wasn't going to address the problem. And so we broadened the scope of the project, and we undertook 5 different research studies to try to answer questions about the urban forestry profession, who's practicing it, why are people interested in it or not interested in it, how interested are students, what's their level of awareness, what are employers looking for, and really trying to make those connections between young people, education, and then their ultimate careers. And so if you go to our website, we have a number of data visualizations, and I'm just showing you some examples right here. So these over here, each one of these graphics are based on our research from the project, and they're downloadable, so you can go and click on them and use them in presentations and things like that. So this is the homepage of the website here. Okay, so first of all, a little more background about the project. The project was carried out by several university partners, and so that included me and Eric Wiseman, Dr. Eric Wiseman here at Virginia Tech, and Keith O'Haron, who was a PhD student at the time and is now in Highland Park, Illinois, and also West Virginia University with Greg Dahl and his students, and Virginia State and University of Maryland at the Eastern Shore. And so we had sort of a regional group of universities interested in urban forestry, and we wanted to use that as kind of a microcosm of studying student recruitment and networking, and then apply it to the national level. All of our research was done at the national level, so we have national surveys and so forth. Then we had agency partners, and so we had, of course, the Forest Service, and then other organizations such as the ISA and the SAF. And then we had a national steering committee, which had about 20 to 25 people on it who were leaders of organizations around the country. So we met monthly in this project, and we used them as a sounding board to really try to get some input from different types of organizations, whether those were and points of view. So those included things like, of course, the Forest Service, national organizations like the Society of American Foresters and the International Society of Arboriculture, and also the American Planning Association and landscape architects and so forth and so on. So the full list of the steering committee is on our website. And so we worked together for 5 years, really addressing some of these issues about what is an urban forester and what is the career trajectory for urban foresters. So we did that through a couple of different approaches. So one was research, and I'll talk about some of our research studies in a minute. So we did analyses of job postings in urban forestry and studied employer needs and student interest and so forth. We also had a lot of networking and discussion, and we also did a survey of networking to really try to understand how urban foresters network with each other. But we also had roundtables at various meetings around the country, and other kinds of networking events to really get some discussion going on this topic. Because one of the things that we discovered in working on this is that urban forestry is, as a profession, has done very little self-reflection. So if we look at other professions, say, anything from medicine to landscape architecture to planning or engineering or anything really, nurses, whatever, most professions spend quite a bit of time reflecting on what they do and sort of defining what they do and defining what they do that's special and sort of strategic planning for the profession. And we have a very limited activity in that area in urban forestry. And one of the reasons I think for that is we're so diverse, and we have people from all kinds of sort of allied professions participating in urban forestry. So we focused on that, and then ultimately we developed a set of strategic recommended actions and goals for urban forestry, which we'll get to in a minute. And so I should take a little bit of an aside here and discuss the difference between urban forestry and arboriculture. Because if you remember that chart that Cindy showed from Bridget Orrick of the sort of career path from arboriculture, up there in the right-hand corner you had urban forester and city arborist. And those things kind of blend together, but the career path through arboriculture into urban forestry, one of the things we found in one of our surveys of job openings and then interviewing people who had obtained these jobs that were available around the country in urban forestry is that that's not a very clear career path. It's difficult to say, okay, if you want to be an urban forester for a city, these are the steps you should take. Everyone's path is different, and I'm sure everyone on this webinar has a different story about how they got into their tree care career. And so it's difficult to communicate that to students. Okay, so as I said, that question of what is urban forestry was one of the first things we tackled, and we met with our steering committee, and we did sort of a focus group and developed this poster, which I just show you an example of here, which is on our website if you're interested in it, kind of looking at what does an urban forester do? What defines an urban forester, and who are these people who are urban foresters? And there are all these different professions who are engaged in urban forestry, and it makes it difficult to define what an urban forester does. And this has repercussions for the job market, because when cities are posting job announcements for urban forestry, they often are not sure what they're looking for or how to identify the expertise that they need for these positions or where to find people who have this expertise. It's just it's challenging for them. Okay, so some of the surveys that we did in Urban Forestry 2020 where we did a jobs analysis, and this was collecting all the urban forestry job postings around the country over a period of 18 months and coding them and breaking them down by skills and qualifications and pay and all kinds of things like that, and doing an analysis of what kinds of jobs were out there. We also did a study of employers and what they were looking for and what their hiring perspective was. And one of the things we found with these two analyses were that there were very few entry-level jobs in urban forestry, and urban forestry defined as managing a population of trees in an urban area. So as distinct from arboriculture where you might be caring for individual trees. And of course they're linked and they overlap, but we were looking at urban forestry jobs, and we did that by searching for a variety of keywords and then manually combing through all the positions and picking out the ones that were urban forestry jobs, because as many of you know, the job titles are all over the place in urban forestry. Okay, so one of the things that when we put these two studies together that became clear was that there really were not very many entry-level jobs for students newly graduated of urban forestry programs, or even for people from other positions to kind of find their path to eventually become an urban forester. We also did a study of university students. We surveyed over 1,000 university students and looked at their career interests, their awareness of urban forestry, and why they might or might not be interested in pursuing a career in urban forestry. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We also survey what we call allied professionals, and those would be engineers, urban planners, landscape architects, the professions that commonly are working very closely with urban foresters in cities. And then we did a networking and career path of urban foresters themselves. And some of the results of that are also on our website. One of them, for example, one interesting finding was if we asked people what their professional identity is, and these are people who we identified as actually managing the trees for a municipality or a local government, less than half of them identify their profession as either an urban forester or an arborist. The majority identify as either something else or a public administrator or one of the allied professions, the engineers, landscape architects, or urban planners. So we went through this process, and we did a number of surveys, a number of studies. We met with our steering committee, and we formulated these strategic actions, and this is also available on the website. So it's just a 2-page document, and we vetted them with the steering committee and over the course of a few months, and refined them. And what's the purpose of this is to provide some direction for urban forestry as a profession, things that we need to be thinking about and doing to try to increase the success, I guess I would say, of the urban forestry profession, and ultimately the success of the management of urban forests in cities. And so I urge you all, if you're interested in this, to go take a look and download these recommendations and read through them and see if there are things in there that really pertain to what you do. Because I think that one of the questions that we have is how can we have collective action where we're really discussing these things and thinking about these questions together and coming up with strategic plans. And so, for example, Cindy alluded to the workforce industry, the industry summit that was in Charlotte in May, Charlotte, North Carolina. And that was focused on the arboriculture industry. But a similar type of discussion for urban forests and urban forest management would be very, very valuable. Also, we have, for example, coming up in the fall is the International Urban Forestry Congress in Vancouver, and there's actually a number of sessions really focusing on diversity in education and communication and diversity in the workplace and urban forest partnerships and urban forest leadership. And so there are a lot of different things going on in these arenas. And so this yellow box here in the upper right corner is linking urban forestry profession with higher education, and that's really the area that pertains to me as an educator. And so there are Dr. Wiseman, Eric Wiseman, and myself and others are working on networking and having some summits about urban forest education. What kind of education do we need? Maybe we need more graduate programs, or maybe we need different ways of reaching out to students. Okay, so one of the things that I think is worth pointing out that came out of our study is really understanding what the potential is for the future of urban forest management. And I think we're really at a watershed moment in urban forestry right now in the United States and internationally, where there is more interest than ever in the vegetation of cities and the impact this vegetation has on quality of life and human health and well-being and environmental issues. And so and at the same time, we have all of, increasing availability of data, more ways of collecting data. We have environmental sensors. We have sensors that are collecting what humans do. Of course, we're all familiar with all the social media and crowdsourcing of data that are possible these days. And of course, we have great analytic power with GIS and computers. And so the possibilities for urban forest management are huge and complex, and there are going to be many, many players, and there's many overlaps between urban foresters and other professions. And there's the potential for urban forestry to develop a lot of specializations and niches, more than there are currently. And so this is a complex topic, and it's something that as urban foresters and part of the tree community, we need to think about how to work together and manage these things so that we have a skilled and informed workforce with the right expertise to tackle these problems. So I'm just showing you an example picture here. This is actually from Blacksburg. And those lovely little pits on the right, those are future tree planting sites. That's how they kind of prep them to make the trees feel at home. A little garbage always helps. But I think the reason I point this out is that these sort of bunkers, these kind of concrete bunkers, are stormwater management systems that you probably recognize. And this is just a classic example of where we have all kinds of professions and needs interacting in one space. So we need engineers, we need landscape architects, we need urban planners, we need urban foresters, we need arborists, all to sort of convene and make this kind of system work. So it has to work biologically, it has to work in handling stormwater. So eventually these pits will be filled with a special soil mix. There's special drains in there. These little cuts in the side are, if I can get that to go down there, no, it's not working, are to allow water in from the street. And then, of course, there'll be growing trees in there. And so it's a really complex system. And so to manage it and design it takes more expertise than one person will ever be able to have. So how can we, manage the urban forestry profession and in conjunction with arboriculture to be able to really make these things work and all other kinds of vegetative systems in cities? And here's just another example. I mean, I'm sure this kind of picture is very familiar to all of you, and there's no particular reason I put in Norfolk, Virginia, but we have this kind of GIS and remotely sensed data available to us now, and it's just becoming increasingly available. And the potential is huge. Okay, but it requires a lot of technical expertise to both generate and interpret this data and manipulate it. And then it requires, again, these integrated teams of different professions for problem solving. So one of the questions that comes up is, how are we positioning urban foresters to participate in this kind of process, and how are we educating urban foresters to be able to work together on a team and have the technical expertise to do these kinds of things and be recognized as having that expertise so they can be working together to solve these problems. Okay, so that brings us to the question of urban forestry education, and I see I'm getting down on time, so I'll go quickly. So one of the things that we determined with our research, and other research supports this, is that there's a very specific body of knowledge that relates to urban forest management that is needed by cities. And also, in addition to that, a high level of high-level communication skills and teamwork skills are extremely important, and that's something that employers feel that students tend not to have. And so how do we kind of get these things together into education for urban foresters, and then how do we package it or define it or identify it, or what kinds of words do we use to describe it to help employers recognize that this is expertise that, say, a student has or even someone further along in their career. And this is a significant challenge. One of the things we're doing at Virginia Tech, which this is just an example, is we are bringing interdisciplinary problem solving into the classroom. So we have a new program called Ecological Cities here at Virginia Tech, and it brings together students from engineering and landscape architecture and planning and many other disciplines and natural resources to try to solve environmental problems. So students get some practice communicating across disciplines while they're in school. In addition, I have down here, use proven techniques to align learning objectives with career needs. This is one of the strategic actions that we recommended from Urban Forestry 2020, and there's a number of different ways to do this. I mean, there's many different processes that are well vetted that help align learning objectives with actual tasks or needs on the job. And I think that's something that we need to do more formally in urban forestry. Okay, lastly, I want to mention professional image, and this is, again, something that is critical to urban forestry. So urban forestry is an extremely not well-known profession. So it's, in fact, I think the University of Massachusetts did a survey of recognition of what an urban forester is, and urban forester is the least well-recognized profession of all the different professions that they listed, including things like extension, cooperative extension personnel, which tend to be also not well recognized among the general public. And so our professional image is varied, and there's very little awareness in the public and in many professional sectors of what an urban forester is and what an urban forester does. And so in order to address a lot of these employment issues and to make sure that urban foresters are brought to the table in decision making, really thinking about what this professional image is and how we can support it is very important. Okay. Let me just go back one time. There's one more thing I wanted to add. We were talking about diversity, and I just want to follow up on something that Cindy was saying, is she was talking about the networks among people. So white people might have their primary people they associate with might also be white, for example. And we also found an example of that in our survey of students when we were looking at their awareness of urban forestry. And the students that are the most aware of urban forestry as a career are white rural males. And you might think, well, that seems odd since they're not living in cities, and perhaps maybe they wouldn't be the people who would be interested in a career in urban forestry. But that's because we also found that those are the same people who are in natural resources programs. And so students who are in natural resource programs around the country are much more aware of urban forestry than anyone else, because that's where those programs tend to be housed. Awareness among the general student population is extremely low. There's very little awareness at all of urban forestry or what it is. And so if we want to recruit a more diverse student body, then we're going to have to think about how we network and how we take our information and our message out beyond our normal associates. And when I say our normal associates, I'm speaking from the point of view of a forest educator. Okay, I think my time is up, so let me just point to this last slide. Again, this is our website. I just wanted to give you an example of this. This is one of our fact sheets. This is a study summary. So if you go to it and you look at the study summaries, there are four of these that are on different surveys. And this one, for example, has salary ranges for urban foresters around the country and their perceptions of their job satisfaction and so forth. It's a little bit of their demographics. And you will see that if you look at this summary that the demographics are 91% white and 78% male. So we definitely are not diverse and inclusive at this point, but we have lots of good things in our future. So that's all I have to say, and I know that I was jumping all over the place, but I hope I gave you kind of a sense of some of the topics we touched on Urban Forestry 2020, and you will go look at the website to get a little more information and get some of these fact sheets so you can peruse them. And I look forward to everyone's questions. Thank you.